from Los Angeles, this is the Echelon Radio Network.
Hey everybody, I'm Brian Hemsworth. We are here with the Echelon Radio Podcast. I've got Brad Levin here today. Brad, thanks for coming in. Appreciate you coming in to see us.
Thanks, Brian. It's good to be here.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
So people might hear this podcast not too long after we record it, kind of Q4 2022, but they might hear it on into the future. But lately we've had kind of a funny market. It's been down, it's been up, it's been down a lot, it's been up a lot. As a financial advisor, how do you keep your clients from driving you crazy during this time? They got to be just nervous and stuff. That's got to be a big part of your job.
Yeah, it's natural for people to have those emotional reactions to this volatility. And I think the media actually perpetuates that, right? There's what I call there's a lot of noise. And it's really easy to get caught up in that and then to draw conclusions, like to extrapolate out this volatility, this recent decline we've had in the past 10 months of this year, and assume that decline is just going to continue in that direction until we get to zero. It's not logical, but fear is not logical, right? So it's important that we anchor clients back to, why are we doing this? What are your needs today? What are your long-term goals? And that we have a plan that we put in place that recognized that volatility is part of the process. I think if we look at historically, over a 5-year period, stocks are up on average 4 out of those 5, right? That means one out of those 4 or 5 years is going to be down.
So I'm glad you said that, because you and I spoke a little bit before we started rolling here. And I went through a period of my life when I took over my mother's finances, and it was very stressful for me because I was watching every single day. And it wasn't until I looked at a horizon of 5 to 7 years, and you look at any 5 to 7 year period of time with our stock market, and it's pretty good, right? There's some dips along the way, but if you have that kind of horizon and you have that kind of diligence, which I did not at the time, it really makes a big difference. It lets you sleep better at night, and it allows you to plan, I think, a little bit more so than maybe, this day-to-day and worrying about that fluctuation that's a little bit up, a little bit down, or a lot of bit up and a lot of bit down.
Yeah, it's really important to have that mindset, because this is just par for the course. It's what happens, and the financial media is designed to keep people watching, right? Media in general does that. And so the more sensationalizing they can be, the more successful they are.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this environment. Technically, we've been in a bear market. This is my 7th one in my career.
Wow. Really? 7?
7. I've been in the business almost 30 years. So that's an average of about one every 5 years, 6 years or so.
Yeah.
And I have some clients that have actually been with me through those 7 bear markets.
Wow.
So, with the exception of this one that I would say we're still in the midst of, those people have successfully come out of those, and we've recovered and moved on. And most of those people, by the way, Brian, are well into their retirement.
Yeah.
Well into it.
Yeah.
So they're doing okay. They're doing well, actually.
So I kind of jumped into this real quick, but let's back up a bit. Tell us where you're from. Tell us about your humble beginnings.
Well, I grew up here in the San Fernando Valley, part of Los Angeles, in a town called Encino, which locals would know. And Encino is a pretty affluent area, but you said humble beginnings, and that's pretty apropos, because I grew up in a very small house, 3-bedroom, 1.5-bathroom house, with 2 parents, although my parents got separated when I was young and ultimately got divorced. And so I spent most of my time being raised by a single mom in an environment where we had a lot less than most of the people that we either went to school with or socialized with. So what I saw was my mom put so much energy and effort into making sure that she could help create as positive of a lifestyle and make it as easy as possible for our family. And that really instilled in me the importance of working hard, and hard work does pay off. But also, I learned from her at a young age. I think I was probably 13 years old when she was talking to me about college.
Wow.
And how she said, Brad, despite the fact that we were actually collecting food stamps for a little while there, she said, I actually started saving for your college through a mutual fund when you were little. And the good news is your college is going to be taken care of.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you know what a mutual fund was at the time?
I quickly found out shortly thereafter, and that's actually one of the things that really interested me in pursuing this career.
So you went off to school after you graduated high school. You went to UC Santa Barbara.
Right.
What'd you study up there?
It's kind of funny. I studied, my degree was in business economics, but it didn't start off that way. I think it was a pre-med major to begin with. I originally had this idea that I wanted to be an orthodontist. And I think it was maybe after the first or second quarter that I decided I didn't really like the idea of sticking my hands in people's mouths for a living. So I changed it.
So let's hold on there for just a minute.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of kids I know who, when they were younger, said, I want to be an orthodontist. What is it about that got you when you were younger?
I was very entrepreneurially minded as a kid. Both of my parents were business owners. And I guess it was market research because I had braces and retainers and headgear and the whole deal. And so every other kid that I went to school with was a client of an orthodontist. And I would go to my orthodontist office and I would see the waiting room just chock full of kids every single time. There was never an empty space. And so I thought, well, this guy's really busy and it's not like kids needing braces is ever going to go away.
Yeah.
And I also played Little League, and my Little League coach also happened to be a different orthodontist. And I was really inspired by the fact that, number one, he had the time to coach Little League, but he also showed up at practice driving a Ferrari.
Oh, nice.
So I thought, well, this guy's got it made. And if he's anything like the orthodontist that I go to, these guys are in a really great position, and that's what I should do.
Gotcha.
So that was my motivation.
So tell us how the transition, UC Santa Barbara, great school, great place to go to school. You're local here in LA in the San Fernando Valley. You go to Santa Barbara. How did that morph into what you're doing today?
So early on in my college career, when I made that major change, I decided that I wanted to be in financial services. And I didn't really know what that was going to look like until I went to graduate, and I was going through, the college graduation, career finding process and starting to do interviews. And what I realized was there were two paths that were pretty clear in terms of companies that I could work with. I could go work for a Wall Street brokerage firm, or I could go work for a big insurance company. And honestly, neither of those were attractive to me. I didn't know a lot about this profession, but I just knew that I didn't want to be a salesperson, really. I didn't want to represent anybody's products. I wanted to be a consultant. I wanted to be able to say to a client ultimately, not only is this the best thing that I can recommend for you that I have to offer you, but I really, truly, honestly feel that this is the best for you, and know that it wasn't because that was one of the products on the shelf. So I really wanted to get into financial planning, and I didn't know what that looked like or how anybody could do that without starting in one of those channels or working for one of the big banks. So it took me a couple years, actually, to get into the profession. I ultimately found a firm that was a local California-based firm that was a growing business that had multiple offices in California and across the country, but was really a financial advisory firm that was independent and was interested in hiring and training young people coming into the profession to be good caliber, high caliber financial advisors. And then ultimately they wanted to open up more offices across the country. So the opportunity was also there to learn to be able to run one of these branch offices and ultimately do that. So that's what I did. I was with them for, I think 7 or 8 years. And I ultimately did take over the office that I was hired in, and I I think 25, 26 years old at that time. And I
Wow.
was overseeing an office of 20 plus financial advisors that was my staff that I was managing.
So did you have any of the challenges that people find when they sort of meet with a bit of success like that at a relatively early age, that management maybe takes you away from what you liked doing?
Yeah.
When working with clients, was that a challenge?
Yeah, no, that's why I ultimately left, was because I really loved the experience of working with clients. And it was really draining sometimes, not necessarily so much management, but hiring and training new advisors and convincing them that this was not only a legitimate business, but a worthwhile business, and that they could be successful in it. And I knew that I could be successful, and I was, and I knew that it was a very worthwhile and needed service. And so I decided that I really just wanted to go back into financial advisory and work with a firm that I felt was a real leader in this business and try to become one of the best of the best. So that's why I left.
So when we jump now into the present, you're with
Yeah.
Colony. Tell us a little bit about Colony.
So Colony Group is one of the largest fee-only investment advisory firms in the country. So when I say the largest, we have 20 offices nationwide. We manage close to $20 billion of assets. So that puts us somewhere in the top 20 of firms in our industry. And I am a managing director and partner with the firm. I run our Calabasas office, which is one of two offices we have in Los Angeles, but the only locations that we have on the West Coast. We have an office in Denver, and then everything else is primarily east of there. So the company's been around for close to 37 years and very well established on the East Coast, but our presence here is quite new to the firm. And so Colony Group has a very strong reputation of working with three types of clients primarily. I call them entrepreneurial people, but it's business owners who are naturally entrepreneurs. So they're founders of businesses. They could be partners of business, partner level. Or perhaps they're in entertainment or professional athletes. Those people we also view as entrepreneurial. So, and we have multiple divisions in our firm. We have a business management division, so that works a lot with those athletes and celebrities, handling everything, soup to nuts, about their financial lives, including paying their bills and purchasing cars or negotiating home purchases for them. We also do tax preparation for some of our clients. So we've got a very large and successful tax practice. And then I'm in our multifamily office group. So this is a group that provides really multifaceted services to our clients, covering everything that they need about their financial lives, working with highly successful and accomplished people who often have very complex lives, that they're busy. And I think our role is, as I say to clients, it's to be their personal family CFO. To really oversee and coordinate everything for them so that they can spend their time doing what they do best in their personal life and doing what they really want to do in their life outside of their profession.
So when you've got somebody who is, they're at a company and they do quite well and they're a high income earner, they get a check. You can project that. You can see it at the end of the year. You can know pretty well what they're going to do next year. Your clientele's probably got some ups and downs, right? Like a lot of celebrities, they might have a big production one year and they might not have something for a little while. Is that a challenge to manage?
It's really important that is managed, because those are the people that need advice, professional guidance the most. And I'd say it's even more so true for professional athletes because they have a relatively short professional career, and they might make a ton of money when they're young and they don't have something to fall back onto as the next stage of their life, once the whistle blows and the game is over. So a lot of them don't manage their money well. They live a very fast, high lifestyle, and oftentimes they're supporting other, family or friends.
Entourage.
Yep, exactly. And so our job is to make sure that they can do as much of what they want to do today, but also being very mindful of the needs of the plan for the future, and protect and build up that wealth so that they have something to take over and take care of them ultimately once they stop doing what they're doing right now.
So I've heard you mention something, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about it. You've mentioned the concept of bucket list living.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think the concept of bucket list is something that most of us are familiar with. It's the things that you want to do before you die, before you kick the bucket. And in my experience of doing this, almost 30 years, I've had the pleasure of working with many clients for 10, 20 years. As I mentioned, some clients, for almost the whole 30 years. And so everybody has that list of things that they want to do. And what I found is that a lot of times when I'm having these conversations with folks in their 60s or 70s, they're telling me that when they eventually retire, they're looking forward to traveling more. They want to see the country. They want to see their friends. They're not local. They want to travel the world. And I had the experience, it was a very impactful experience a couple of years ago. I lost 3 friends who were my same age. The oldest one was 53. This was 2021 during COVID. None of them died from COVID. 2 died of pancreatic cancer. And 1 died of a massive sudden heart attack. And what I realized was these people never got to check off the things on their bucket list, And so it really brought home for me the importance of not waiting to live your life. So much of what the financial planning world focuses on is planning for the future, which equates to delayed gratification. I was just talking about professional athletes who do the opposite. They're only living for today, and there is no tomorrow, but there's a balance. So bucket list living is about, let's identify what those things are that you do in life that you want to do more of, or what would you like to have more of in your life? What really drives a sense of fulfillment for you and excitement and fun. And let's create a financial plan that gives you the permission to do those things throughout your life. Let's not say that retirement is the destination, because it's not. It's just a signpost along the way. The end of your life, that's the destination. That's where we're all going. We can't avoid that. And hopefully that is much, much further in the future in terms of years. But we only get one chance at this life. So let's get as much out of it as possible. And let's try to take those bucket list items and build that into your life today. So the problem with that is people look at that and they say, well, that's great, but if I spend all my money today, then I don't have it for the future. And that's really true. So this is where financial planning is really important, because we want to take that wish list, if you will, of the things on the bucket list, and we want to build that into a client's financial plan, which is basically forecasting. Forecasting based on the inputs, the assumptions that we know about the money that they're making today, the money that they can save, the money they've already saved, and how that's invested, and use forecasting models to project how long this is going to last. And what we want to see is that they have a very high probability, I would say in the high 80 percentile or better, that they're not going to run out of money. So we can show them that they can take those life goals, those bucket list items, and move them forward into the present, and still everything's going to be okay. Then people feel that they've got a sense of clarity and confidence that they can do this. And I think not only is it okay to do that, it's actually very positive, because a lot of people that I talk to, they are living to work.
Yeah.
Right? So they don't enjoy what they do. They do it because they want to stop doing it someday. And I feel very strongly that a lot of people are really stressed. And the reality, Brian, is life expectancy here in the U.S. peaked in 2014. And it's been declining every year since then. And stress is a major contributing factor to that.
Wow.
So if we can take down that level of stress by giving people the permission from themselves to spend more of their time doing what they want to do, then they're probably going to be less stressed, have more energy in their professional career, and have a better quality life. And I'd say probably a longer lifespan too.
Wow. I love that concept of giving yourself that permission, Because a lot of us grew up in a time where that was not what we were taught.
Yeah.
That you don't get permission. You have to wait till the end. You've got to wait till that destination that is so far out there. And, maybe if we're lucky, Gen Z, maybe millennials will have a little different view, but I kind of think Gen X and baby boom, we were taught differently.
Yeah.
So to have somebody counsel us on that with that idea of permission to let yourself sort of create the pathway that you want to, I think is phenomenal. I want to ask you a little bit about a little bit of what you do away from work, but I have one more work question for you. Explain to us what that means when you say Colony Group is independent. What does that mean when you're independent?
It's a really good question. So what that means is that we're not owned by a Wall Street brokerage firm. We're not owned by a bank or an insurance company. Our shareholders are the partners of the firm. And so we think that's really important because that means that there is no conflict of interest in terms of the need to generate profits for the shareholders of a public company, number one, whose interests have to come first over that of the end clients. That to us is a real big potential conflict in the financial world. And for us as a firm, being a fee-only firm, that means that the revenue that we generate comes not from the sale of products, any commissions, any transaction fees in any way. It is strictly a fee for service tied to our clients' relationships, and those fees are very transparent and also very competitive in the marketplace. So that means that we're a true fiduciary. Our interests are closely aligned with that of our clients, and we think that that's really paramount for people to get great quality financial guidance that they can trust in today's world.
So you're really not beholden to a certain product. You don't have quotas of things you got to sell.
None.
So you really get to guide your clients in the direction you think is the best way, whether that's very active, very passive, or anything in between.
Right. We do all those things.
Yeah.
So we don't have a specific mandated approach for investing. As you said, there are some that want to be more passive, sort of longer term buy and hold, more tax efficient. Others want to be more actively managing their portfolio investments. We do both of those things. We also do a lot of what we'd call private or alternative investment strategies that are not your traditional stock and bond portfolios. So it's really a very wide spectrum. And then all these other services as well that have nothing to do with investing that we also do.
Gotcha. All right, so let's have a little fun away from the office for a minute. Favorite band growing up, who was it?
Easy. Rush.
Rush, really?
Yeah. So one of their albums, Moving Pictures, was the first album that I ever bought.
Oh, wow.
And I saw them in concert many, many times. The funny thing is, when my wife Jennifer and I went on our first date, she told me that she was also a Rush fan. Now those that know Rush would find that quite surprising.
Yeah.
Okay. She's a very attractive young woman, and I wouldn't say she's that young. I don't want to make this sound weird. She's just a couple years younger than me. But anyway, that band really appeals to guys. They're like a hard rock band. Women were typically not Rush fans. So that was something that was quite appealing to me. And I actually took her to her first Rush concert, which was their last concert ever. Mm. And the interesting thing was she had cancer, and she was going through cancer treatment at that time. But she was determined not to miss that. And she was going through chemotherapy, and she was kind of sick, but took her to that concert, and we didn't know. But it was the last concert of that tour, the last tour for that band ever.
Where was that concert?
That was here in L.A.
Where?
At the Los Angeles Forum.
At the Forum.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been talking about the Forum so much lately. So, that's where every big show was when I was a kid growing up in LA.
Yeah.
You went
that's where I first saw it.
Little shows were at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium or Pacific Amphitheater. But if you went to the Forum, that was a big show. And then the Forum kind of lost its gloss, and we started seeing Springsteen would always play the Sports Arena, and then we had Staples Center, and we had things like that. But the Forum's kind of come back now, and it's on the same property as SoFi.
Yeah.
It's kind of got this resurgence and all these new people that want to book into it. I even watched a YouTube video of of Eddie Van Halen saying how when he was young and before he was really playing in Van Halen, that the Forum is where he went at every opportunity. That's where you went to see the big shows. And,
that's cool.
And I think that's interesting to hear that your wife, that you were able to take her to a let's face it, a pretty special opportunity, not just to see the concert, but what ended up being a concert, a very memorable concert on that. What favorite action film for you?
That's a good question. It's hard to pick one. I've always really liked the movie Heat a lot.
Arnold, right?
No. Robert De Niro and Al Pacino.
Oh, yes.
And Val Kilmer.
Yes. Not as well seen as some other films.
No. I mean, I love anything with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. So that was just really special to see them in an action film like that. There's, I'm sure, many, many others, but that one comes to mind.
You mentioned with your clients and clients that may want to travel. I know you travel a lot.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite places?
I really like Southeast Asia a lot. I'd love to go back and see many more. I'm dying to go to Vietnam. My wife and I talk about that a lot. But Bali, Thailand, both of those places are absolutely incredible, so beautiful, and the people there are incredibly nice and just really generous in terms of their desire to make your experience as good as possible, very hospitality oriented, and also relatively low cost. I remember my wife and I were in Thailand and we were getting massages on the beach, and like an hour massage would be like $10.
Oh, wow.
I mean, you had $3,000, you could spend a month there and you could live pretty well.
Wow. I had the fortunate opportunity, I'm going to say it was 5 or 7 years ago, had a client who had a factory in Taiwan, and he said, "You want to go bicycle riding in Taiwan?" I said, "Yeah, it sounds great. When do we go?" And he said, "Well, I'm not going. I'm sending you." And I said, "What do you mean you're sending me?" And he was friends with the Taiwan Tourist Bureau. And he said, "I know you worked in, magazines before, so just go and write an article about your trip and, you'll get to do the whole trip." So I went and did the trip, and it was a wonderful trip. But it was a little bit different for me in that it was a trip of journalists. And 30 years ago, journalists meant somebody who had a camera around their neck and they had a pad of paper and they had a pen or maybe a dictaphone. And these were all young YouTube travel influencers.
Okay.
And so it was a whole different world of what they were looking at. Everything was about the food and everything was about the experience. And, they really didn't care about the little nuances of, where to go on what day. It was all really about this experience. And the reason I bring it up is one of the couples that was their husband-wife team that I've become friends with, and we've actually done some work together, they live typically for about a year in either Thailand or Bali. And then they go to Europe for a year, but they still travel full time. They own property in Brazil, but their home bases are not Brazil. It's typically Southeast Asia. And then they do that for a couple years and they bounce to a lot of different countries. And then they go to Europe. And they speak so well of Southeast Asia. And I've gone a couple times on business, but never on vacation. I think that's one that I've got to do. If you were to go back there right now for one trip, where would you go?
Well, I said Vietnam.
That's the one.
Yeah. People that I've talked to, when I ask them, people that travel a lot, what are their favorites? That's always at the top of the list. And, it's kind of atypical. I mean, based on the fact that there was the war there in the 70s. But people say it's the most beautiful place that they've ever seen. Just incredibly beautiful. So I really want to see that. My wife and I, when we travel, we don't like to have things very scheduled. We don't like to do tours. We want to kind of go at our own pace. For us, it's really about the serendipity of experiencing things that you might not have expected to do. People that you're going to meet, that you have great conversations with. When we were in Bali, we had this driver that we hired that was recommended to us by the lady that owns the dry cleaners that we go to right here down the street. And my wife said, I don't need to come back and pick this up, anytime soon because we're going to be going on this trip. And she said, where are you going? She said, well, we're going to Bali. And she said, wait. I got to give you this guy's number. So she hooked us up with this driver that we had for the whole entire week, who then actually took us to his home. And he was taking us to this very spiritual grounds that you had to be dressed properly in. And so he and his wife and the family dressed us up in like traditional ceremonial attire that we had to wear to get into this sanctuary. And it was just really cool to have that experience.
Wow.
I just love seeing the local culture, the food, and getting to know the people that are very different than our lives here.
Where's next on your list?
That's a good question. I don't know. This year has been full of a lot of travel. We travel a lot in this country. There's just such incredible places to see. We just came back actually from a trip to Ecuador. We were in the Amazon rainforest.
Wow.
So that was really cool. But as I said, we've done a lot of travel this year. Most of that's been domestic. So we're kind of just taking a pause right now. But I think we'd love to go back to Europe next year, perhaps the Mediterranean. Those are a couple things that we're planning soon.
Were you a little, pent up during COVID and, with not as easy ability to travel during that time?
Yes and no. I mean, for a while, yes, but there was a period of time, it was the end of 2020, I think. Yeah, the end of that year where we got the sense that travel to some countries was going to be opening up again relatively soon. And then it shut down. Yeah. But we had this little window where we said, literally on our bucket list was to go to the Maldive Islands. And we said, okay, well, that opens up. We're going to go. So it did. And the funny thing was, every country had this list of safe travel countries that you could travel to them if you were coming from these countries. Or if you were an American, you could go to these countries and it was safe to go there and then come back. And the Maldives was one of those countries. And the reason was because that's a country that's made up of little islands. And those islands basically shut down to tourists. So there was no tourist activity. And when they opened up these island resorts, each island being its own resort, the people that were there were quarantined on that island. So it was like the COVID-free zone. So we took advantage of that opportunity and we went there. And again, this was the end of 2020. So there was not a lot of travel taking place. And it was an incredible experience. It was absolutely amazing and so beautiful. And the hospitality was great. It was like they were operating at full capacity as far as staff, but it was like 30% capacity as far as tourists were concerned. So we were at this island resort with like 75 people on the whole island. So it was really cool.
So it sounds to me like you are practicing what you preach, that you are doing your own share of bucket list living.
You bet.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
So I'd love to have you come back and talk to us about, the market and all the other stuff. But we've been chatting and saying that we want to have a travel podcast come up. I think you got to be one of the people at the table for that one. I think you got some great stuff, and I think a lot of us want to hear those great places to go. For some of us, I had unfortunately 2 trips canceled during COVID that we just couldn't take.
Yeah,
that we got shut down, and we're kind of rebooting our travel opportunities. And I'd love to hear some of those. So, Brad, thanks so much for coming in. Appreciate your sharing some of your time with us, and I'm going to take this bucket list living to heart. I think that's a great philosophy. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you, Brian.
Presented by Echelon Business Development. More than just networking. Way more.